Hello, everyone. I'm Annie Gibbins, and you're listening to Memoirs of Successful Women, the podcast where you get to hear candid conversations with fascinating women from around the globe who share aspects of their business and life journey, how they measure their success, and what they have learnt along the way. Hello and welcome to Memoirs of Successful Women. Today I have the joy of introducing you to Michelle Jewsbury, who is going to be talking about all things domestic violence and how to move on in a positive way from trauma to triumph. She is the CEO of Unsilenced Voices. And Michelle is an international philanthropist. She's also a speaker and an author and a coach. She's also traveled the world helping those who are less fortunate. So I'm really looking forward to unpacking Michelle's view on life and those that she serves with you today. So welcome to the program, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Annie. I'm very, very excited to share with your audience and honored to be on your podcast.
Terrific. So how about we start by telling the listeners, well, what is Unsilenced Voices? What is all of that about?
Yeah, of course. So Unsilenced Voices is a nonprofit organization that I started in 2017. And I started that because I was personally involved in a domestic violence relationship for 4 years. So between 2012 and roughly the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, I was with a man who I thought was my Prince Charming, who courted me and sent me flowers and gifts. And we went to sporting events and concerts. And roughly 4 months after we began dating, my head went through the drywall. And yeah, and that's when I realized, wow, this isn't right. And then of course the apology stage came into that cycle, and he profusely apologized for hurting me and told me he would never do it again. And unfortunately the abuse escalated to even more severe physical violence, sexual violence, financial abuse, and of course emotional manipulation. And when I escaped that relationship, I didn't even understand what I was going through. And I sat in front of my computer, very similar to what we're doing now, Annie, and I just started to write and document what happened to me. And when I started to document, it came out in a play format because I originally moved to Los Angeles, California to be a movie star. And I was able to portray my character and roughly 13, my abuser and roughly 13 different other characters on stage. And people started coming up to me after that, telling me their stories of abuse and thanking me for speaking up.
Wow.
And that's when I decided I had to do more. And that's when I founded Unsilenced Voices. And we decided to help all over the world rescue victims, provide resources to the community, and also survivors of domestic violence.
Oh, such an important cause and such a mammoth task, right? So in one way, it's like this is something you can do and you have the capacity and opportunity to be able to have an incredible impact in this very challenging space. And then the other part must be just overwhelming of how many people are in this situation, which is shattering, isn't it? It's sad and it's overwhelming, but you can only do what you can do. So you've called it unsilenced. So it implies that, yeah, it is a very silent world. Did you feel that before you started speaking about your experience that you were alone in that space? Did you feel like other people wouldn't feel comfortable talking about it?
Well, it wasn't other people when I was trapped in my abusive relationship. I was concerned with me. And just like most victims trapped in that abusive relationship, I felt that I was at fault, that I had triggered him, that for some reason it was because of me that my abuser was acting out and hurting me. And it wasn't until I finally left and discovered how many other people experienced the same type of abuse that I went through that I knew I had to share my story and speak up. But it's very hard. I mean, I coach individuals, I help other people overcome their traumas and obstacles, neglect, stress, anxieties. And it all stems from the unworthiness that we felt while we were involved. And it's that psychological manipulation that happened during that abusive relationship, where we internalize it and
Mm.
really feel that that abuser is telling us the truth, and they're not, right?
Exactly. They're definitely not. So do you look back now and think it was the mind games that the abuser put onto you, or was it this default behavior that we have that assumes it must be me? I must be at fault. What was it? What's the balance there?
Well, when it first started happening, I didn't understand what I was going through. So it wasn't that I was thinking that he was hurting, that he had a problem. It was more like, well, maybe I was triggering him, because he used a technique called gaslighting,
Mm-hmm.
which is making me believe what he believed, or his lies. So if I were, for example, to wake up after a beating and go through the incident in my mind, and then go through the incident with him and tell him and ask him why he did these things to me, he would say, well, you remember it incorrectly. It didn't happen like that. And you
Ah.
triggered me. You shouldn't have said this, or you shouldn't have done this. And that's when I started to internalize the pain and internalize the abuse itself, and really think that it was my fault. And it wasn't until I escaped that I understood that this technique is used subconsciously by the mass majority of abusers out there, and that most victims feel at fault and blame themselves for the abuse until they recover.
Mm. Wow. So does the abuser use that intentionally, or is that just a psychological behavior that they implement by default so that they're never at fault, right? If you put it onto someone else, like that narcissistic sort of trait, that it has to be someone else's fault, then they're always faultless, if you like, or not open to judgment. Do you
Yeah,
think that's intentional, or is it just the way they are?
I don't think that it's subconscious. I think that it's unconscious. So the behavior is so similar amongst all abusers that it's more along the lines of, most narcissistic abusers act like this.
Mm.
So most narcissistic abusers on the outside world seem like a very well-mannered, very appreciated, very successful person, but
Mm.
behind closed doors is where the abuse happens, the emotional abuse, the physical and the sexual violence. And they subconsciously control you. So make
Mm.
you believe these lies, these situations, and make you believe that it really was your fault. So I think that it's more a trait that is beneath the surface that they may not even know that they have.
Right, right. And because of that, because it is behind closed doors, other people would think it's not possible. Your story, once you start sharing that, they'd be like, but I know that person. I can't imagine that to be true. Is that what you found?
Oh, exactly. So, my abuser was a very successful entrepreneur,
Mm.
and he volunteered in schools and helped to teach youth. And when I first came out, I I was asked, well, why did you stay? There was a lot of victim blaming going on. Well, you must have done something to
Mm.
add to the escalation of the situation. Maybe it was your fault. And yes, of course, that came out, because that comes out um, really for every abusive relationship that I've
Mm.
been dealing with, like who I coach, and the women that I talk to. Um, but it's understanding and realizing that it was never your fault. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you wore, what you said. It doesn't matter if you triggered him or not. It should have never happened.
Mm.
So that control and manipulation then makes you think that, oh gosh, maybe it was me. But when you escape, you realize that it wasn't. And then that's when I was able to start speaking up more. And what really helped my situation is he assaulted another woman after me, and
Mm.
she went to the police. And then that's when I had a decision to make. I could either go through follow through and help her with the criminal charges and then take out a civil case against my abuser and
Yeah.
take my power back, or I could have continued to be emotionally and financially controlled by him. And as you can see, I decided to speak up and I pressed charges, and I have photographs, and there were police involved in many incidents. So then that's when people started to be like, oh, maybe he's not a knight in shining armor.
Yes.
These women are correct that that he has hurt them.
Incredible. How hard was that? Even though you know it's probably the right thing to do and you know you need to get back your power or just yourself, really, but how hard is it to go through that process and expose everything and now be in that position of influence and power?
Yeah, it's at first it was very difficult. I remember when I escaped, prior to him assaulting another woman, I used to sit in the back of church and cry, asking God, what can I do? Or why did it happen like this? And I was very, very confused and didn't know how to use my voice. And once I discovered that he had assaulted another woman, I swallowed my pride
Mm,
and I decided no matter how fearful I am, I have to speak up about what's happened to me, because that's about the time when I started learning how incredibly prevalent this injustice is worldwide. I mean, we're
yeah.
talking 1 in 3 women have experienced domestic violence, 1 in 4 women have been raped.
Mm,
And in the United States, 1 in 11 men have experienced domestic violence. So this is an epidemic that we
yeah.
can change only by using our voice and telling our stories, because through our stories we can create sustainable change. So I gained the courage to speak up, even though it was very difficult. And it's been so amazing and transformational, not just for me but for the thousands of people that Unsilenced Voices impacts, and that Michelle Jewsbury gets to impact through speaking on stage and through my books and my coaching.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. That's right. You didn't just confront the offender, the issue. You've actually taken it to become your, almost like your life purpose or a blessing, a positive thing that you can help people. I've heard you mention the word escape like a number
Yes.
of times. And that's an interesting word because it shows how threatened you were, or that captive that sense of captivity in a bad environment that you want to escape, which just it's not just leave, right? It's a passionate word. What does that word mean to you? What is escaping from this situation? Why do you use that word?
Well, leaving means that you can leave on your own accord.
Mm,
Escaping meant that I had to leave on without him knowing. So it
mm,
wasn't just my accord. It was I had to be cautious. I had to be careful. I knew that if I left, I could potentially be killed. There were multiple times I was beat for hours and hours, and I knew that he um, physically could dominate me, and
mm,
he had been emotionally controlling me. And I'm not going to lie, Annie, I left my abuser 4, 5, 6, 7 different times before I finally escaped and didn't go back.
yeah.
And I remember packing my car and I was shaking so much. And Paul was at work, and I just knew inside of me that I had to get out. So I went to the closet and I just started grabbing my things and throwing them in my car, not folding anything, not not making anything neat and tidy, but just throwing them in. And I remember getting in my car and starting to drive and starting to cry and just feeling this enormous weight being lifted off of my shoulders,
Mm.
but still so fearful.
Yeah.
And I ran away, like 3 hours away from him, and got the help that I needed in order to permanently escape that situation.
Oh my gosh, I've actually got goosebumps, Michelle, because that's right. That situation of it's an emergency dash. Here's an opportunity. I have to take the opportunity. It's not about, making it all pretty. It's getting away. But then also that decision is potentially a life-threatening decision, right? And that's the reality of it. So it is terrifying. where do you drive to? What does someone in your situation, when you drive for 3 hours, what is your destination? Is it family? Is it a shelter? Is it police? What happens?
So we typically teach that when you escape a domestic violence relationship, you have to be cautious, because most murders of victims happen when they try to leave.
Yeah.
So you have to plan out your escape. You have to plan out where you're going to go. And I would not recommend going to your sister's house or your mother's house where he could find you. I would recommend reaching out for expert help, shelters. I know in a lot of countries we have organizations that can help us. I know here in the United States, I know in Australia, I know in a lot of predominantly first world countries, there are those resources available to us. So contacting the shelters, contacting the police, it's so important to get the police involved so that they know what's going on. So God forbid, if something were to happen to you, they know where to look. So
Yes.
file a restraining order, right?
Yeah.
Making sure that the police are with you if you have to go back to the home and get things from the home, especially if you're scared for your life and he has been violent with you, physically violent with you before. And then really, in order to take your voice back and in order to take your power back, speaking up against him. So having him serve some type of repercussion, which means, filing a case against him if you can, or speaking up about it publicly, getting the therapy you need in order to do that, because we all have this sense, this feeling that, it could have been our fault when we first escape, right? And then in order to speak up, we learned that it was never our fault for that abuse. But it's a dangerous situation. And if you are in a country where there aren't a lot of resources, go somewhere where he can't find you, somewhere where he wouldn't initially think that you're going in order for you to escape.
Very good advice. Do not be predictable. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. You've also said that this abuse started after, I think you said 4 months, but it took 4 years.
Yes.
Why did you put up with it so long? Is it just because it takes that long, or it took you that long to go, I have to get out, because of all the gaslighting, because of the effect it had on you? Or is it actually that dangerous? Do other people need to take that long? Do you encourage and mentor them to leave much earlier, obviously, before the damage occurs?
Obviously, I would recommend leaving earlier, but in my specific situation, and I want your audience to know that each domestic violence situation is different. They're not all the same. And with me, I grew up in a household where I never experienced violence. I never saw my dad even yell at my mom. So when I got myself trapped, I literally fell head over heels in love with Paul. He courted me so well. We used to lay on the bed together and talk about where our dreams and visions could go, where how we can impact children together. Like I said, he would volunteer for kids, how we could grow together, have a family together. And this fairy tale romance was then instilled in my head. And I thought that this fairy tale could be real. And then that first incident, when my head went through the wall, he had already begun psychologically manipulating me. So after he had pushed me so hard and my head bounced, literally I stepped forward, looked behind me at the wall, and all I thought to myself was, oh, I need to patch that. I shouldn't have said that to him.
Wow.
Right? So it took me a while to realize what I was facing. And if you don't know what you don't know, then you can't do anything about it. So by the time I received the first incredibly painful and hurtful beating, which was in October of 2012, that was roughly 10 months after we had begun dating. And during those 10 months, he used gaslighting. He psychologically manipulated me. He controlled me. He isolated me. I didn't have money because I couldn't work. I didn't have a vehicle to drive because he took it away from me.
Mm.
He really made me reliant and dependent on him. So after that happened, and I literally remember this. I woke up the next morning after drifting in and out of consciousness, and he was holding my hand on the bed. And when I looked at him, I looked like I had just completed 10 rounds in a boxing match. And he began to sob. I'm so sorry, Michelle. I love you so much. I promise I won't do this again. And that's what kept me in the relationship, because of the hope, because of
Yeah.
the desire to want that fairy tale romance that was initially portrayed to me in the beginning of our relationship.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps most victims trapped, is that apology stage, because
Yeah.
you want to believe that person so bad. And to tell you the truth, the abuser wants to believe it as well. But unless he gets the help that he needs, it won't change.
Exactly. Oh, incredible. I think it must be harder too when you have had the evidence of the fairy tale, right?
Mhm.
So if you, those who go into a relationship and it is stormy and it is then abusive, then you haven't had the dream, right? And whereas I think it must be so much harder when you go, for you, you're saying, I had the dream. I met Mr. Wonderful. We were planning an incredible life together. All of my childhood experiences were positive, right? So you believed in the dream and you found the dream. And so therefore, when these incredibly juxtaposed sort of situations happen to you, then it's still this, oh, well, I can't believe this is true because I do want to believe in the dream. It must be an incredible roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah, there were times where I used to go hiking and I used to just scream and yell at the sky, at God, and ask him, why is Paul like this? Why can't you fix him? Why is it the way it is? And looking back, I now know that God was carrying me through that experience. And I used to I used to ask about forgiveness, like, well, do I forgive him this time? Do I forgive him that time? And I kept hearing the phrase in the Bible where it says forgive 77 times, right? 7 times, 11 times or whatever. And I used to think that forgiveness meant for me to stay.
Mm,
And so I stayed. But forgiveness didn't mean for me to stay. Forgiveness meant for me to let go of the relationship, let go of the pain, and trust in God.
yeah.
And it took me a long, long time to realize that. But I tell you what, once I finally forgave, I was able to really speak up. I was able to tell my story. And that's when I was able to impact so many people.
Mm. Yeah, because forgiveness, that's it. It's a very interesting topic, but ultimately it is the opportunity to release. It's the
Yeah.
opportunity to say, I'm not going to be held by all of that trauma and emotion and the tie that it has and the hold that it has on you. It doesn't mean that you forget anything. It actually just says, I'm going to choose to let it go so that you can move on. But it's so hard. It's such a very difficult. It doesn't surprise me it took you a very long time, because I think it takes a lot of people a long time to be able to process that, because it's almost like saying it's okay. It's not okay. It actually, I think sometimes it's more about you than them. It's that release with forgiveness. So let's tell the listeners a bit about your book then. What is your book called, and what will they receive from reading your book?
Yeah, definitely. So my book is called But I Love Him. And it's my personal memoir in my domestic violence relationship. I go over extreme challenges, the abuse. I go into detail. I talk a lot about what I was thinking and how I was feeling during all of that. The not recognizing, of course, what I was going through. And then in the end, it talks a lot about me taking my power back, me being able to then use my experiences to help others. And that was also recovery for me, especially doing my play, how I was able to stand up and really act through my emotions. And we teach a lot, you have to feel in order to heal, which means that you have to feel through. You can't push down what's happened to you. There's something called adverse childhood experiences, where if something happens to you as a child or a young adult or adolescent that is traumatic, and then you don't write about it, talk about it, do not traditional or non-traditional therapy about it, you just push down those feelings, then it comes out in physical and or emotional ailments as an adult. Autoimmune disorders, chronic fatigue, diseases, pain, headaches, obesity. So I had to learn to feel, and I talk a lot about that in my book, and learning to accept what was, but not turn my life into a victim. And knowing that me being a victim, I now can become a victor. And you can turn your circumstances into something wonderful, because God makes beautiful things out of broken pieces. And it talks a lot about that. And you can find my book at michellejewsbury.com. So it's right there on Amazon.
Oh, I think it's going to be an amazing read for so many people. And I love that it's not to stay in the hard times, it's to process the hard times, feel connected to someone else's journey, and realize that the experiences, different people might have, there'll be bits that resonate. And I appreciate everyone's journey is different, but I'm sure there's common themes, and to finish in such a positive way. Has that then resulted in a empowerment network? How have you then used that community of people that you've then touched to be able to connect together and to have that ongoing?
Yeah, so in 2017, when I founded Unsilenced Voices, I was then able to travel to West Africa. So we currently work in Ghana and Sierra Leone, and we have an affiliate partner organization in Rwanda where we're doing sensitization meetings. We've got 2 other partners from Nepal and the Netherlands, and we're expanding to the USA, which is a lot. But when I was in West Africa, things are different, right? So they don't have the same resources that we do in Australia and America. So it's teaching the women there their worth. And I love how we've been able to make a difference using our voice. And this is why it's called Unsilenced Voices, because if you have so many people speak up about a situation, then you can make sustainable change. Very similar to the civil rights movement here in the United States. When the civil rights movement was happening, Martin Luther King wanted a peaceful protest, but he needed a bunch of people to come on board in order to make that change. It's the same thing with domestic violence and discrimination, gender discrimination and abuse, is we need a bunch of people to come together and speak up peacefully about what's happened to us in order to create that change. And I love what we've been able to do and where we're going. And it's almost exhilarating, and it's definitely my mission, right? Yeah. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Absolutely, you did. And I think that's true. We've all got different situations of support and those who can help us, and those on our journey and understand our journey. And that's it. Globally, it is very different. But I'm a big believer for that of, if we unite together, you can culturally change views on things, right? You can actually, if enough people use their voice to say, you know what, this is not okay. When did this become okay to accept? When are we going to address these issues? Whether it's domestic violence or climate change or, racial disparity, once we collectively, say that
enough is enough.
Enough is enough. And that helps those who also then still have a voice that's still coming out, right? Those with the very strong voice, because they're further on their journey, can still speak for and help those who are still finding, allowing that voice. So we've all got a voice. It's just whether we are using it. And so I love that. I love that people can just join a group or a movement that actually empowers them while they're receiving that for them, because it takes time, right? And that's right. You're very different 10 years out of this journey than you are when you've just escaped. And so
Exactly. And honestly, you know, I escaped in 2015, 16. So I'm roughly 5 years out of the journey.
yeah.
And during those 5 years, I, you know, went to court. I sued my abuser. I had to sit across from him face to face in a court ordered appearance. And it was very, very hard. But it doesn't matter if it's domestic violence or climate change or animals. Just like what you were saying, take a stand for something,
Mm,
because there are billions of people on this planet, and there are hundreds and hundreds of different injustices that happen worldwide.
mm,
And we as a collective humanity can change these things.
mm,
Human trafficking is also a huge topic that is on my heart. And people don't understand how big this industry is. We're talking a $300 billion industry per year for
wow.
human trafficking. And there's over 18 million children worldwide that are being trafficked. And the same way a trafficker will trap a victim is the same way that a narcissistic abuser will trap a victim of domestic violence. It's
Mm,
the courting, it's the I love yous, it's the let me buy you this and take you here and treat you like a princess. And then something happened.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of things to stand up for, and you
Mm.
just have to take a stand for something.
Yeah, absolutely. Find your thing and be passionate about it, right? And just put your whole heart and soul into it. We can't be everywhere, but we can certainly address issues that are of meaning for us, you know, that we see is important, and it resonates with our values and our experience. And that's exactly what you're doing. So you're now having, you know, global women's events and conferences, and you're really coming into your own. Tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah, I'm very excited. So in 2019, I decided to start speaking internationally. So I started to use my voice on a larger platform. So I was speaking at large in-person events at the time. I had teamed up with an organization called Power Team International, which is a coaching program really to help you speak on stage and monetize your intellectual intelligence and your
Mhm.
experiences. And my mentor, Bill Walsh, has always rooted for me. And he encouraged me to continue speaking up. And this is where I started to develop a coaching program. And I've got a breakthrough masterclass and webinar series, and an intensive series. And and then from there, I remember I was speaking in Egypt in March of 2020.
Mhm.
And that's right around the time where COVID hit
Yes.
and airplanes started being grounded, and I got stuck in Egypt and then got stuck in London for like 44 hours. And then when I got back to the US, we had to pivot our businesses. We
Mm.
all had to pivot. I mean, let's be real here. Things have just moved online. So that's exactly what happened. I moved online, and I've spoken on over 65 different podcasts and virtual summits since March of 2020. And now two of the gals actually that I met in Egypt, we have put together an international women's conference. A gal, Tracy Tolley, and she's located in Brisbane, and another gal who's located in Los Angeles. And we're doing this international women's conference to give women a voice. And that's going to be on March 20th. I'm also putting together a webinar series with a gal from the UK, where we're going to talk about how breakups impact your life and how to overcome those challenges. And it'll be a 5-day series, 90 minutes each webinar, and you'll get our books, you'll get homework and documentation, and you'll be able to go back to the recordings. And then I'm also doing another summit in April, and that is to raise awareness and money for an organization called Pink Bags, which is an organization dealing with domestic violence out of Arizona. And then, of course, Unsilenced Voices, and then She Is Hope LA, which is also located here in Los Angeles.
Mm.
So we're going to be doing that International Women's Conference every other month.
Yeah.
So we are already sold out for speakers for the March event. But if you are interested in speaking in May, I believe it's May 15th that we're going to be yet that we're going to be doing it again 15th and 16th and 16th and 17th in Australia. And you can find more information out about that at studenteconomicforum.org.
Perfect. I've already looked at that and booked in, and it looks amazing. So I just love what you're doing, and I love the way that you are just collaborating globally with people who are on that same page, right? Same passion, and getting that so much value for those people who are going to be attending and to receive for a very, very low cost. It's incredible, and I think that is just the best when you're having such a hard, challenging time, to feel that there is a network out there, that people are there to help you, and it's not going to cost very much, and that's brilliant. So this podcast is called Memoirs of Successful Women. So what is being successful? I would look at you and go, you're incredibly successful, Michelle Jewsbury. What does that mean to you? What is success?
Success is also happiness. So you can be successful in a career and be unhappy. I don't consider that success. Success is along all realms, right? Being able to be happy in your personal life, also in your professional life, having that work-life balance, knowing how to use your voice and speak up for others. But success really means making a difference. So we're not put on this planet for ourselves. We're put on this planet for each other. And in order to be successful in life, you have to leave a legacy of some kind. What is your why? Why do you wake up and do what you do every single day? And I put that on the forefront every single morning I wake up. And I'm so incredibly grateful to be a part of Power Team International, because I get to go back out on the road in March and be at live events. Our first live event is March 25th in Las Vegas. And you can come and hear me speak for free and learn about our masterclass. But being successful is really keeping your goals and your dreams in front of you at all times. And don't allow the naysayers and the negative people to impact where you are going or why you are doing it.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Your why is everything, right? And we're all so different and so unique, and that makes the planet a beautiful place, right? It's just the quirky, the unique, the special things about different people that it is the joy, and I love that you've got to that stage of life that you know it very clearly about yourself, and that you're able to bring that out in so many women around the world. So thank you so much for your sharing today. Thank you for being on my program, and I wish you all the best for your upcoming conferences and the work that you do globally.
Thank you. And if your audience is interested in helping Unsilenced Voices, we need volunteers, fundraisers. We're looking for board members. So if you're an executive and looking to help out and be a part of this incredible movement, please contact us. You can go to unsilencedvoices.org for more information on that.
Fantastic. All right. And I will be putting all of those details on my podcast platform. And so definitely those who this message is resonating to you today, definitely contact Michelle directly. She would love to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Annie.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Memoirs of Successful Women. You can find me at anniegibbins.com, where you can download my free resources, get connected on social, and check out my online magic transformation program. If you love this show, feel free to subscribe to future episodes, and of course, share it with your friends. I'll see you again soon, and until then, happy podcasting.